Indiana University. Can you all hear me? I am excited to be here. Actually, I've spoken on this campus a number of times, and I've gotten paraphernalia that says Indiana University. I was thinking about wearing it. I live down in Orlando. I wear it out to Disney World when I'm with my family. And then I always get somebody who will be in the crowds screaming out, "Go Hoosier!" Yeah. And I think they're like calling me a name because I forget I have a shirt on and I'm ready to fight. And then finally I look down at my shirt and say, "Oh yeah, it's that great university up north that they're hollering about." So it is a pleasure for me to be here with you tonight. As I mentioned, I'm from Orlando, Florida. But I am not a southerner. I am a northerner. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I am used to the winter. But in Florida, when it gets about 60 degrees, everybody thinks that the weather is broken and everybody's complaining, and I'm looking at them like something's wrong because it's still relatively warm. Before we get started and jumping into what we're going to be hitting on, it is broken tonight. I always think that it's good for people to get an understanding of who someone is if they're going to be speaking. So I'm going to show you a couple of slides about me. There's some things on your program, but I'm going to show you some more. Here's my lovely bride, Saria. We have been married for 14 years, and she truly is the love of my life and just such a precious gift to me. And so that's my wife. Here's my family. We have 5 children. So there is never a dull moment in my house. There is always lots of noise, and I forget their names, and sometimes I call the boys the girls and the girls the boys, and so it gets kind of discombobulated in the house. With my oldest daughter, on your left, Selah, just turned 13 last Friday, and so she's my princess, my little dancer, my girly girl who wants to hug and play tea party with daddy. My second oldest daughter, Kayla, is 11, and she's more of the rough and rugged one who wants to wrestle her brothers and throw basketballs and play tackle football. And my son, DJ, is sweet, tells my wife all the time that when he grows up, he wants to marry someone just like her. He usually says it right when he's in trouble, and that lessens his discipline. So he's learned the art of manipulation at a very young age. My other son, Joseph, is 5, and he is a comedian. And you just never know what you're going to get with Joseph. You're either going to get a joke, or you're going to get somebody throwing a remote control in your face, hitting you with it if you're not ready. So I just never know what I'm going to get with him. And then my youngest daughter, Eliana Grace, who is 5 months of age, and she is just so precious, and it is just so hard for me to be away from her for a few days. But that's my family. I have been, as it says in your program, speaking for about 17 years, and a lot of it is to college students and high school students, professional athletes, people that are in business as well. And so I've got a chance to travel all throughout the country speaking. As I mentioned, I speak to athletes. I do some speaking with professional football teams and basketball teams, and spoken with professional baseball players. But for a year, you can go to the next slide. I served as, you can go to the next slide. I served as a mentor to the Cincinnati Bengals organization. And I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So Cleveland and Cincinnati, if you know anything about sports, especially football, there's not like this friendly type rivalry. In fact, the owner of the Bengals, Paul Brown, who is since deceased, used to be the first coach of the Cleveland Browns. He kind of got ran out of town. So when I started working with this organization, there was this family day of meeting with the coaches and the players, and my wife was there and my kids. And so my wife, we're from Cleveland, right? And so this is Cincinnati Bengals. They don't really like Cleveland, especially the family, the ownership family. So as my wife is meeting the head coach for the first time, she says to him, "You know we're Browns fans, don't you?" And I'm back there like, no, you don't say that, you know what I'm saying? And so like 6 weeks later, like I have this role where I'm able to go in and mentor these players and spend time with them and go into the facility. And about 6 weeks later, the coach told me that the owner didn't want someone to be in the position I had in the facility And the thing that came back to me is he heard what my wife said, and that just messed everything up. But it's interesting working with these guys. I was an average football player at best, and I know that they were really in some trouble in their life when they started asking me advice about football. It's like, yeah, I know you're really messed up now because you're asking me about football. Or other times they would be talking about their financial situation, and it's like, do you realize we're like in two different tax brackets? Maybe if you gave me some of your money, you wouldn't have to worry about it so much, and then I could take a load off of you, and then I could have something to worry about. So those were always the conversations that we could have. Before speaking and serving as a mentor to professional athletes, I served in the area of workforce development and worked in the business community for a little bit, worked with the bank, and in the bank, helped the bank to develop training programs by which we could help people to get jobs at the bank. Then I worked in that same area in government, and so we were the ones who worked with different organizations and the county to develop training programs, so I did that for a number of years. In my family, I am kind of a success story. I'm the first person who ever graduated with a 4-year degree, so it was kind of a big deal. My mom was the highest educated person in my family before me. She had an associate degree, and then I went on to get a bachelor's degree. And then a few years later, I got a master's degree in public administration, so I was kind of like the celebrity in the family, especially when it came to academics. And speaking of celebrities, I grew up actually 20 minutes away from Cleveland. You can go to the next picture. I grew up down the street from Halle Berry. And people always ask me, did you date her? And you know, I want to say yeah, but no, I didn't. And I was like 5 years younger than her, so she looked at me like I was a little kid. But me and my friends, and this isn't anything, she had a house where it was right across the street from some woods, and I just have to say there were some nights that I never made it home because I was sitting in those woods with a sleeping bag. So a little bit about me. But y'all didn't come here to necessarily hear that. We came here tonight. We've been confronted with this idea on campus, these slogans, these t-shirts, and people talking with you about it is broken. And so, you know, Martin Luther King once said, he said that we're confronted with an eternal oughtness that the world is not as it ought to be. That there just seems like there is something in the world that's just not right. And for all of us, we can look out at certain things and we look at that and we say, that is just not right. It should be a little different than what it is. And so I want to look at a couple of things in our world about it is broken. You another woman on the side. Never let your wife know how much money you have just in case something happened. And these were things that I was taught as a little kid. So my family experience was one that was broken. My relatives around me, their lives were no different. It was kind of a broken situation. But growing up, I didn't realize it was broken. I thought it was actually quite normal. As a little boy, I had a drug problem. The drug problem is that my grandmother, when I was about 8 years of age, drugged me to church, a place I really didn't want to go, but she started dragging me to church. So I go to this place where I start hearing about God. And I hear about a God who loves me and a God who longs for me to be forgiven and have a relationship with Him. But in this church filled with people who would throw their hands up to sing songs to God and listen to messages about God, I would see them outside of the Sunday that we were in church, and their lives didn't look radically different from my family members who didn't care about God, who didn't want anything to do with God. So I thought that was broken as well, because there was this disconnect between this God that they were speaking about and the lives of the people who said that they walked with this God. So there was this huge disconnect. My mom and dad divorced when I was 11 years of age. And it was kind of a happy time and a sad time at the same time. You know, I didn't have to worry about the way my dad treated me and my brother, or see my dad treat my mom the way he treated her. But it was also a thing where as a boy, man, I longed for the affection of my dad. And the only time that we had family vacations was when my dad was at home, and after my mom and dad divorced, we never had family vacations. So there was this kind of hole that was there. My mom had this dream for her sons. And my mom thought that if she could get me and my brother an education, that some of the things that we experienced, that we wouldn't have to experience them anymore, that we could have a better life. that we could make more money. So when my mom and dad divorced, my mom started working more because she had this goal that she was going to provide for her sons to be able to go to college. But what that left me with is my dad being out of the house and my mom being out of the house as well. And there was just a lot of brokenness and pain in that. And so you know what I did? I ran to my friends. Because I was wanting to feel like I belonged, like I fit in, like things were good. So my friends, I would do anything that my friends did if I felt like they showed me some affection. So as an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old young boy growing into a young man, I was vandalizing people's houses. I would steal from stores. I would experiment with drugs. I was smoking cigarettes. I was drinking alcohol because my friends were saying that these were the things that I needed to do. And as long as I did them, then I kind of felt like I fit in with them. But then at the same time, I didn't feel like these were the things that I should have been doing, but I just didn't feel like I fit in. Education was something that was pushed. If my mom was going to work this much in order to send me to college, then education must be something that's really important. So even though I did those things with my friends, I was also busy about getting a good education. So I did very well in school, in middle school, in high school. I also got involved with athletics, was fairly athletic, got involved with athletics, and these were things that I looked to. But I was a kid who basically wore a mask. I wore a mask like everywhere that I went. I wore a mask around my mom. I wore a mask around my grandmother who was driving me to church. I wore a mask around my teachers. I wore a mask around my coaches. I wore a mask around my friends. But there was all of this brokenness that was splintering in my life. So finally I graduated from college. And you know, college, because it was one of those things that it was kind of what I was looking forward to for so many years, I just knew college was going to be the place where I would find the answer to the brokenness in my life. That I'd get an education that would later lead to this great job, that would later lead to this great future. I just knew this was the place of meaning and purpose and significance in my life. So I go off to college, and I go to the University of Pittsburgh, and it's a couple hours away from home. And I felt like that was the best of both worlds, because I was still close enough to home, where if I needed things, I could go home, but I was far enough away to kind of do my own thing and to kind of make my life the way that I thought I wanted it to be. I was a very good student. 4 out of the 8 semesters in college, I was on the dean's list. I graduated at National Honor Society. But at the same time, I was going to have fun along the way. I didn't play football in college, but some of my best friends were football players, and I kind of rode on the coattails of their privilege. So I would go to some of the parties with them. I would even wear some of their shirts when we were off campus so people thought I played football. And it was almost like I got the fringe benefits of being their friends. I went to the best parties. I got a chance to drink some of the best alcohol and hang out with some of the prettiest girls. And so I thought life can't get any better than this. I ended up graduating, and I grew up in the 80s, which was a very, like today, a very sensual, sexual decade. And so all my friends were having sex, and many of them had had sex before we graduated high school. But I had never had sex. But I always told my friends I had sex because I wasn't going to be the oddball out. And they would always try to corner me, and I would always tell them about something I saw on TV and make it realistic enough to make them think that it was me instead of Brad Pitt or somebody else. But I never had sex. But my sophomore year in college, I got into a relationship with a young woman. And I have this brokenness from my family, right? I have this brokenness because I have this daddy wound. And my mommy wasn't really around a lot. I got this big wound, and I get into a relationship with this young lady. And I feel like I love her, and she loves me. And the relationship became sexual pretty fast. And 3 months into us being in a relationship, she became pregnant. And I wasn't ready to be a dad, and she wasn't ready to be a mom. And I wasn't ready to drop out of school to get married to her, to provide for her. And she wasn't ready to do the same. She pretty much came from a single parent home as I did, and education was a huge thing. And so we're confronted with what are we going to do? We're both young. We have plenty of time. We thought we love each other, so we'll get married later. We always have time to have kids. So what we decided is that this life, this child, that's growing in her womb is interfering with our lives. And so we made a decision that we would have an abortion, and that we figured that once we did that, that everything would continue the way that it did. And we figured our relationship would continue, but it didn't. She went and had an abortion, and it brought so much trauma to her. It brought so much pain and agony to her. And this girl that I said I loved, I allowed to go through this traumatic situation, and it began to bring a rift between she and I, and our relationship became broken. And in order to medicate my pain, I didn't have her anymore, but there were other girls on campus, so I became very sexually promiscuous. In order to medicate my pain, I drank a whole lot. It's a mystery that I graduated college in 4 years, because I began drinking about 4 nights a week, the weekend, starting about Thursday. From Thursday to Sunday, I was literally blasted, trying to forget about some of the pain and some of the brokenness from my family earlier on, and some of the brokenness that I'm bringing in my own situation. So just having sex and drinking. But for some reason, I still continue to do very well in school. It's one of those things where I don't think I'm smart. I think I have a memory that I can read something, I can regurgitate the notes, I can read the book, I can put it back on a test and do very well. So this was kind of how I lived, and I ended up graduated. As I said, I'm the first person in my family with a 4-year degree. So I thought I would be, celebrated. I thought everybody would come to my graduation. I thought like the family would load up caravans and bring all types of things to come see me graduate. And only 4 people show up. So I graduate, and then I can't get the type of job that I thought I would get. And I don't make the type of money that I thought I would make. And nothing is seeming to work out, because I'm thinking that the answer to fix some of these broken things in my life is to get a college education and to make some good money, and that doesn't seem to be happening. But I get a job at the university. I start working at the university, and one of the perks there was low pay, but it gave me the benefit of being able to go to school. So if a bachelor's degree wasn't enough to get me where I thought I should be in life, then of course a master's degree will do it. But as I'm working on this job, I get in a relationship with a young lady, and we get in a sexual relationship. And a few months later, she becomes pregnant. And all the excuses I had when I was a 19-year-old sophomore in college, I don't have anymore. I have graduated from college. I have a job. What I did at 19 years of age didn't fix anything. It actually brought a lot of pain and shame and hurt and regret to an already broken life. So I made a decision that I'm going to marry her, and I'm going to take care of this child. I don't even have any idea of who I am or what my life is supposed to be about. I have no idea of who she is. But I think I'll magically put a ring on her finger, and I'm going to magically become a different guy. I remember growing up thinking that when I grow up, I will never, ever be like my dad. I will never treat a woman the way my dad treated my mom. I will never treat my children the way my father treated me. And guess what? I put a ring on her finger, and I'm just like my dad. I treat her the same way my dad treated my mom. I am running out in the street chasing after other women. I'm going to school. I'm never home. I'm working. We have a son who's born, and I'm still doing the same thing. I'm running, trying to chase after all of these different things. I get a job after I graduate from graduate school, and it's still not the type of job or making the type of money that I thought I would make. So for 5 years after graduating from graduate school, I'm at a different job every year, because whatever I'm doing isn't fixing the brokenness in my life. It actually is just amplifying it. And then I find myself finally, when I'm 26 years of age, I find myself going through a divorce, and my life literally falling apart. Brokenness that has been a part of my story from the time I came into this earth. Brokenness that came because of other people's things that they did, but brokenness that was a part of my story because of choices and decisions that I made. 26 years of age, and my life radically broken. And I'm going to stop right there. And if you could put up the next picture. So I have a son. I showed you the picture earlier, and it's a beautiful picture of me and my wife and our 5 kids, where there's somebody who's missing. my son Sakari, who's 21 years of age, who's had to grow up many years of his life without his dad being there because of the choices that I made to try to fix the brokenness of my life before, but only contributing to greater brokenness, which has led in many regards to him having brokenness in his own story that he's had to deal with because of some of the brokenness from my story. So as I stop there, and as you've listened to my story, what are some of the areas in your life that are broken? If you're really honest, and you stop wearing a facade, you stop hiding behind the mask, and you stop acting like everything's okay, what in your life is broken? And how have you tried to fix the brokenness in your life? How are you trying to fix the brokenness in your life? And as Dr. Phil would say, how is that working for you? Let's look at a video real quick, and then I'll come back and talk to you some more. Something in us that tells us that it's supposed to be different than what it is. And when we think about our world today, you know, if everything is just random, if it's just random chance that we're here, then why aren't we okay with the way that life is? Why aren't we okay with the hand that's been dealt to us? Why do we even recognize that there is brokenness in our lives or in our world unless there is some type of standard that we're looking to that is not broken? See, the fact is that each and every one of us, we have been created by God. We are created by a God who is perfect, and what he makes is perfect. God created everything. He created the heavens and he created the earth. He created everything that fills the earth. And the pinnacle of his creation is human beings. It's man and it's woman. And there's nothing he ever created like us. He created the birds and the bees, the mountains and the trees, the seas and the sand that fills up all the beaches of the world. He's created things that are outrageous like giraffes and peacocks and platypuses. He's created things that cause us to smile and other things that cause us to frown. God is very creative in all that he's made, but there's nothing that he's made like us. God made us in a perfect world. God created everything, and it had perfect order, and it had perfect harmony, and everything was functioning the way in which the Creator made it. And God made us to be the pinnacle of his creation. He created us unlike anything else that he made. He created us in his image and in his likeness. He created us so that we could have a relationship with him, so that we could know him, and we could experience his love, and we could experience his presence. But something happened that caused a disconnect that we no longer sense that, and everything seems to be chaotic, everything seems to be out of order, and everything seems to be out of place. See, when God made us, he made us and he gave us the ability to choose. He made us to have a relationship with him. And if you think about a relationship isn't something that's forced. He didn't make us to be puppets, that he would just pull our strings and we do whatever he wanted us to do. Because God knows a real relationship involves choice. God is a God who is perfect in everything about him. He doesn't need anyone or anything. He is perfect in and of himself. God is what people would say triune in nature. He is one God, but there are three persons who are co-eternal and co-equal. So he has perfect unity, perfect love, and perfect community in who he is. He doesn't need anyone or anything. He didn't make the earth and the world and the universe because he had a need. He didn't make us because he was lonely. He made us because he chose to. And through the universe and the world that he made, it gives a glimpse of his eternal power. It gives a glimpse of his invisible attributes. But he made us and he chose to make us. Nobody forced him to do it. And being a relationship, God gives us a choice. So when he makes the first man and woman, he puts them in this perfect place called the Garden of Eden. And he gives them everything that they could ever want, wish for, or imagine. And in the middle of this garden, he puts two trees. He puts one which is the knowledge of the tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the other is the tree of life. And he says, do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The day that you eat of that tree, you shall surely die. Well, why would God do that? Why would he make this beautiful garden, this beautiful place, and then put a tree there and say it's off limits? He did that because he wanted us to be able to make a choice, not for our love to be forced. He wanted us to choose that we in return would love this one who made us for a relationship with him. But the first man and woman chose to eat of that tree. And they were lied to and said that the day you eat of that tree, you'll be just like God. And what they were being told is the day that you eat of that tree, you can be God. You make your own decisions. You decide for yourself what's right or wrong. Look at our culture today. We live in a culture where people will say, you do what's right for you. I'll do what's right for me. Even if those two things are diametrically opposed to one another and they cancel one another out, because all of us in our own way, we become our own gods and we live our own life and we make our own decisions. We become the captain of our own destiny. But what that did is when they ate of that fruit, they surely died. They didn't physically die that day, but what gave them life, the very life and connection they had with God, was broken away. It would be like your cell phone that has so many intricate features that it can do. You can do so many things on it, but if you don't pay T-Mobile, you don't pay AT&T, you don't pay Sprint, they're going to cut that thing off, and all these things that your cell phone was created to do, it can no longer do. The life of that phone was cut off. And the day that the first man and woman disobeyed God, their life was cut off with God. They were separated from God. And the perfectness of the creation he made became chaotic. It became out of place. There was hostility between man and God. There was hostility between other human beings as the earth became populated. And as we are the descendants, all of us, of this first man, all of us have gone the same way. We've done our own thing. We've thumbed our nose at God. We haven't lived our lives to please or to honor God. We've lived our lives to please us. We do what's pleasing for us. We're the ones who we think about when we make the decisions that we make. But the world wasn't made to revolve around you and I. It's like the sun, where all of the planets revolve around the sun, and as long as they're in their perfect order, everything is okay. And our lives were meant to revolve around God, not to revolve around us, and we have this chaos and this confusion in our life. And we're doing everything we can to try to fix the brokenness in our lives. Any of you ever been fishing before and you caught a fish? You bring that fish out of the environment in which it was created to be in. It thrives and it lives in water, and it was made to be in water. But when you bring it out of water, it's doing everything it can to try to get back into that environment that it was created for. It'll beat its head on a rock. It'll beat its head on the boat. It'll try to slap you with its tail. It'll try to do everything it can to get back into that environment for which it was created for. And we've been trying to do everything we can to get back into that perfect environment for which we were created. But every one of us has sinned against God. We haven't lived for him. And what we deserve from a God who is perfect and right and who loves us and who made us for his pleasure and glory, every one of us deserves to eternally be separated from him. And there's nothing we can do to get back to that place where everything works again. But this God loves us so much that he would send his son Jesus Christ into this world, that God himself would leave from the glory of heaven. He would come into this earth that he made. He would become a man. He would be born in a way that he was born without sin as we were. He would perfectly obey his Father, and he would go to a cross and he would die. And the reason why he would die is he would take my sin, your sin, my brokenness, your brokenness. He would take it upon himself, and he would pay the penalty for our brokenness. He would take that divide that had put us away from God, and he would bridge that gap to bring us once again to the place where we can experience true life with God. Jesus Christ came to do that for you, and he came to do that for me. And when I was 26 years of age, as my brokenness was becoming more and more evident and real to me, it collided with the fact that a God loved me so much that he was willing to come into this world and to restore the brokenness in my life, to forgive me for all of my mistakes and all of my sins, that he would begin to minister to my brokenness and begin to restore my life again. That all of us have broken pieces in our life. But God is a God who can make those broken pieces beautiful if you will bring them to him. We're going to look at a video that was done with the broken pieces that some of you wrote on this week that were broken into. The broken pieces of your life and make something beautiful. For so many years, I had taken those pieces of my life and I tried to make a masterpiece, and all I made was a mess. I didn't even know what the picture was supposed to look like. God is a God who wants to take the broken pieces of your story and make something beautiful out of it. You look at this mosaic and the pieces are still broken. They're still broken. But yet the brokenness has been made into something that is beautiful. I've seen God do that in my own life. He's taken a man who was sexually immoral, in adultery, who actually made a decision to do away with one of my children through abortion, who wasn't there for another one of my children, who's gone through divorce. And I've brought the broken pieces of my life to Jesus Christ. And I've seen him minister healing to the hurts in my heart that I didn't even know existed. I've seen him minister forgiveness to me. That though those things are true and real in my story, I don't walk around with a sense of shame or a sense of guilt. Because Jesus, when he died on the cross, he bore my shame. He bore my guilt. He took my pain. And he took the pieces of my life as I brought them to him. And he's making something beautiful. And this is what God longs to do in your story. He wants to make something beautiful in the midst of the cracks, in the midst of the imperfections, in the midst of your choices and your mess-ups. God can take it if you will give your life and the pieces of it to him to make something that is radically beautiful. And this God who came to begin a work in us here, who makes it so that we can live eternally with him, this Jesus who died on a cross, he ascended and he's seated at the right hand of his Father in heaven. And one day he's going to return to this earth and he's going to make everything new. He's doing a work in us, and he's making those who trust him new, but he's promised to make everything new. One day there's going to be a world where there will be no more orphans, and there will be no more slaves, and there will be no more war, and there will be no more conflict and tension in families and in marriages, and there will be no more killings, and there will be no more death, and there will be no more tears that are being shed. There will be no more sadness or shame or evil or wickedness. There will be no more terrorism and no more racism. That one day he's going to make everything new, but today he wants to start a work of newness in your life and in your heart. And while you think of your own broken pieces, and while you contemplate bringing those pieces to the one who can make a masterpiece out of your life, I want you to listen to the words of this song, because God is the God who can make beautiful things out of broken pieces. to do something new in your life. Jesus came into the world to heal us from our hurts, to bind up our broken hearts, to forgive us of our sins. Jesus Christ invites you tonight. He brought you to this place with the brokenness of your story to bring it to Him, that He can make something beautiful and make something new. You know, when I was confronted with my brokenness and the reality of this one who was my creator, but the one who came to restore me back, and I remember praying a prayer to Him and pretty much saying, I've taken these pieces of my life, I've tried to make something out of them. All I've made was a mess. And now I invite you, Jesus, to take my broken life. I give it to you. I ask you to forgive me. I ask you to heal me. I ask you to do something new in me. And many of you, as you sit here tonight, God's Spirit is working in you. And you realize that you've tried many different things. And it's only exacerbated the brokenness that you felt. That right now you're confronted with a decision. That you can continue to walk down the road that you're walking. You know, it's often said that insanity is expecting different results when you keep doing the same thing over and over again. Jesus Christ is warning, the one who made you, the one who knows the very plan and purpose for your life, the one who loves you with an unconditional love, the one who has promised He will never leave you, He will never forsake you. He is inviting you tonight to come into a relationship with Him. And He wants to begin that work of newness in you. And if you feel Him tugging on your heart and speaking to you, I'm going to ask you to do something that maybe seems a little odd. I ask you to close your eyes. Think about anybody else in the room. Just close your eyes. And if God is speaking to you, you can say a prayer to Him as I did. You could say something like this. You could say, Dear Jesus, I invite you to come into my heart, to forgive me of all my wrongs, to heal my hurts, to bind up my wounds. I give you my broken pieces, and I'm asking you to do something new in me. You can open your eyes. Now, all of you there on your program, there's a comment card. I'm going to ask you all to fill that out. You put your name, your email, your phone, your address, your year. How did you hear about tonight's event? Remember, filling this out, you can get a Kindle by just filling it out. Your name may be picked out. But then on the back, you may be interested in maybe talking more about this area of brokenness, or about what you heard tonight about God, or having a relationship with Him through Jesus Christ. You can put, if you're interested in a discussion group regarding tonight's topic, you can check that. If you'd like to talk with somebody personally about what I shared tonight, feel free to check that. If you'd like more information about crew and events like that, you can check that. And then any comments you have about this event, feel free to write those down. But if tonight you prayed in your heart and asked Jesus to take the broken pieces of your life and you invited Him into your heart, and it was the first time you ever did that, I'd ask you to put an X or a cross on your form, either on the front or the back. Or if you already know Him and you just feel like your life has been drifting away from Him and you want to rededicate yourself to Him, you can put an R on your comment card. So while you're filling those out, I'm going to ask Alex Beers to come up, and he's going to do a spoken word piece for us. Woo!